and welcome again to another wonderful edition of Interfaithing, Why Families Can Embrace Two Faiths Under One Roof. Hi, everybody. I'm Rabbi Ari, and this amazing friend and colleague next to me is Reverend Anna. Hi, Reverend. Hi,
Hello, hello. It's always just an absolute joy to get together, and we're blessed and thrilled to be connecting with one another and all the things that we have to share today with our listeners. I think, folks, man, we're going to get into so many different things.
We are going to get into so many different things. And I think in one way that today's all about connection and the opportunities to connect, the challenges of connecting, and also of the ways in which our traditions both put roadblocks before us when it comes to connecting, and how they often can kind of pave the way for us to be able to do that too. So the very first thing that, Anna, we were very excited for this, although we had to kind of break out our calendars to make this thing happen, is that we are going to schedule our very first two of, we hope will be many more, online Zoom gatherings among members of our Patreon community. So if you are a member of our Patreon community, patreon.com/interfaithing, where we have both paid options and free option to join our community, that we will be offering a few different times over the course of the next month for us to have a larger get-together. This is a chance for us to really connect with one another, to learn from each other, to ask questions, get answers to some key interfaithing questions of, how am I going to make this wedding work, to my crazy in-laws want us to do this religious thing, and what do we do about that, to all of the different questions that may come up, to really build a sense of community together online, no matter where you live. And so we encourage you all to join our conversation, but the only way to do that is by signing up to our Patreon page. Again, patreon.com/interfaithing, where we can be able to spend our time together. Rev Anna, anything you want else to share, to plug, and to encourage others to join us at patreon.com/interfaithing?
Yes, just underscoring again, free, free, free. There is no other obligation in order to sign up for our Patreon community and then be able to dive in to these types of gatherings and everything else that we have available on Patreon. And I know that we're all probably shocked that the holidays are upon us.
They're coming.
And they're coming. They're so soon. I'm not ready.
I'm also thinking of like those horror films, because we just came off of Halloween, and it's like, it's coming, but it's supposed to be good. It's supposed to be good.
It is, yes. So in my other life, with my other hats on, I work in the mental health space, and I am totally aware that the holidays are coming can actually bring up a lot of trepidation and anxiety.
A lot of feelings.
A lot of feelings, including, I've got to host this person that's a part of the extended family. So many things can come up. And rather than use that as a deterrent or an excuse, please bring those feelings.
There you go.
And join our communal space. And in fact, if you're going to have family and friends who are gathering with you during some of the days and times that we're offering for these events, bring them along. Have them on the screen behind you. The more the merrier.
So the short is that if you're feeling miserable because the holidays are coming, join our community. Or if you're excited, or if you're nervous, whatever the feelings are, we want it to be able to be a space together. So again, please join us at patreon.com/interfaithing, and you'll be able to choose one of the times that will hopefully be available for us to all together, and that will lead to more conversations together. But again, you can only do that by joining us at patreon.com/interfaithing with either the free or the paid option, because, while of course everyone is welcome, those who support us will be able to help ensure that this work continues for the long term. So of course we support and appreciate all of our members of our community, including those who help support us financially. So that's item number one, and talk about being connected all together. And that's one way of building that connection. One of the topics that I wanted update everybody on is the DeLucabergs. We talked about in one previous episode about can I have an interfaith bar mitzvah? And then I gave an update last week that came from the parents. So just so everyone knows, everyone is on the same page. First, we had the idea that we want a bar mitzvah and, question is, what is that and? Then the family came together, or the parents came together and said, how about bar mitzvah and heritage celebration? Well, of course, then we had to talk to the kid, to son DeLucaberg. And let's just say he wasn't as into that last piece of it. Not for nothing, because, and again, this like comes back to some of the questions related to what it means as an interfaith family to engage in a ritual tradition that is so specific to one of the religions, that he was like, well, I want to do the bar mitzvah, and so let's just do the bar mitzvah, right? Like just like do the thing. And as I was talking, Mama DeLucaberg and I were talking with him about it, and part of what kind of came out was more of just that last phrase, because he wanted to involve the family, wanted to involve his dad's side, the Irish Italian side, but the question was he didn't want it to be done for him. He wanted to be able to celebrate with his family, like his whole family to be there. So it was more just about what name really works. So we came up with what seems to stick now, or hopefully will stick now. I'll let you know if that changes anytime. But what seems to stick now is bar mitzvah and family celebration. Bar mitzvah and family celebration. So Anna, what do you think of that name?
I think it's sweet, and I absolutely love that the son, the young person who this is all about, got to express himself and really uh really share what was important for him.
Right.
It's sounding like the parents were able to receive that. And, even if it's just about, hey, we've got to print these invitations, like
Like, what's going to be on
what's
the
going on the
title?
paper?
Right.
The family came to an agreement, and hopefully that releases some pressure
Yeah.
and means that, like, moving forward, even if additional questions of like the what and the how come up, like everybody knows that they can work it out.
Yeah.
And
They can make it work. Yeah.
yeah,
They can figure out something that is authentic, because that's a part of
exactly.
it, is a sense of authenticity, which is a very
Yes.
challenging word in ways that can be brandied like or just thrown out there, and people are like, oh, you need to be authentic, 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 but it's like, what does that actually mean? And so sometimes it
Yes.
loses its meaning. But I think that what
Yes.
authentic, the real power of it is that you feel it is doing the job that you want and need to get done, and that you're doing the job in the right way, whatever that right way is. And again, that right way could be different for different people. But part of the idea of building connections is that we are willing to adapt and see what the right way is that works for everybody involved in this process.
Yes. And I'm so glad you used the word connection again, because this is something I know that we talked about previously on this topic. Sometimes as parents or as the adults who are trying to organize something, it's very easy for us to fall back on the because I said so
Mm-hmm.
answer whenever a child or a young person or somebody um, on the fringe
Yeah.
of the events, asks a question. And for in this case, for son DeLucaberg to feel a connection himself
Yeah.
directly to what is going to be happening, to me also creates the foundation for authenticity.
Right.
Because sometimes I think, just like in other conversations that we've talked about, like, well, what do the words ritual and tradition mean?
Mm,
Authentic can get kind of muddied up
yeah.
in the same way. And if you mean authentic because it looks exactly like something else that you've seen, but you don't feel personally connected to
Yeah.
it,
Then that's
it's
not
still just performative.
right. It's not actually authentic to you. It's authentic
Yeah.
to what's been shared. But if it doesn't mean anything, then
Hmm.
what's the point? So
Exactly.
I'm really excited about sort of seeing how the process of learning goes, and moving forward, and we'll keep everybody up to date. And if
Yes.
you have any questions of yourselves, if you are interested in thinking about a bar mitzvah and what that means for your family, again, please make sure to send us an email. You can also email us at interfaithingpod@gmail.com. Again, that's interfaithingpod@gmail.com. And of course, please join our Patreon community at patreon.com/interfaithing, where we can really engage even more deeply on all this. So that's the one update I want to give. One thing that I went through this week that I just wanted to raise, and for our listeners, this is not going to be the main topic for today. We're kind of bury the lead about what the main topic is going to be for our discussion, but Ravana's got a juicy one for us all in a moment. I just wanted to share that I was able to be a guest panelist on a particular online forum run by FJMC, which is a conservative Jewish men's group. And part of it was related to International Men's Day that occurred this past week, and about how men are working within the context of Jewish spaces and religious spaces in the world and building connections among men. So it was a really fascinating space to be able to be invited in, because the conversation particularly we're looking at was on equity and the relationships of men and women, especially in the home, and how that manifests itself, and opportunities and challenges of it for what it means to be a man today. And then particularly thinking about it in an interfaith context. And without getting into sort of all the details of what was being discussed, one of the main points I wanted to raise there is, especially in this conservative Jewish space, was the notion of patrilineal descent. And that according to traditional Judaism, Judaism is passed down through the mother and not through the father. And so that means two things. The first is that it means that if you are a Jewish father and you are married to somebody who is not Jewish, who is a woman, that your child may not be considered to be Jewish in certain communities. In certain communities they are, but in certain communities they're not. And if you would want your child to be considered Jewish, they'd have to go through a full-on conversion, just like for anyone else who would be interested in Judaism or who is going to be raised as a Jew. So part of the larger conversation here, and we're talking about patrilineal descent, was also that in a case of an interfaith case where you have a Jewish mother and the child is considered to be Jewish among all different groups, and what role does the non-Jewish father have to be able to play? So part of the deeper conversation, whether it was a Jewish mother and non-Jewish father, Jewish father, non-Jewish mother, is the notion of heritage being passed down from both sides of the family. And that in both contexts, when it comes to the men's role, this was why I was in this particular group, is that in one case, it may be where the non-Jewish male feels like, I'm not a part of this passing along of the Jewish tradition, because they have their own tradition coming up, and maybe they're not going to share it as much or feel like they can't. They just have to accept what's being given. Or then in the case of a Jewish father, it's that I may want to, but I can't because my community is not welcoming. So that one of the messages I was trying to share from an interfaith perspective is the notion of not being fearful of the influence and the heritages of both sides of the family. And then whatever context makes sense for the family, whatever works, whatever beliefs, whatever histories are important, to make sure that they're brought into the family space and it looks different for every family, that there is a sense of welcoming, a sense of honor, respect, and also appreciation for the unique differences that both heritages have to play, and to be from a perspective, or to start from a perspective of yes and. How are we going to bring those heritages authentically, as our word of the day, authentically, into the family unit? So it's a really fascinating conversation. I just wanted to make sure that I shared that with all of you. And Anna, if you had any thoughts on any of that.
Yeah, I think it's incredible that this group and the space and the time um, that you got to share with them exists, because I think it's also something that a lot of Christian communities wouldn't necessarily understand in the same way, because this notion of matrilineal versus patrilineal descent, and what does that even mean to kind of pass along your faith tradition in that, like through that lens, it's not something that I think a lot of Christian communities grasp.
Well, I guess then,
in the same way because
maybe a
that's
question.
not a topic of conversation.
Well, I guess that leads into maybe just a question off of it of like, what does it mean then to even pass down a Christian heritage or tradition, or is that just not a thing?
Well, I think the specificity of like from whose lineage does it come from and being, to use our word of the day, an authentic Jew by some definitions means it can only pass from XYZ, so genealogy then really matters and all that. And I think it's just one of those consequences of Christianity being an outgrowth of Judaism.
Hmm.
And it's even kind of interesting if you stop and read the Gospels, the couple of different times that Jesus's genealogy is put forth,
Mm,
right? And the fact
right.
that Jesus was born of a woman, but is not genetically related to
Her.
Joseph.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, well, they said
related
Joseph.
to Mary, yes,
That's
because
so
came
interesting.
from
Right.
Mary, but not related to Joseph, the
Wow.
human man who played the role of the father who raised him.
That's
And so
fascinating.
even like looking into the genealogy of Jesus, the human, and then of course everything else that is also trying to make that genealogical connection to like back to David as a part of, oh, this is how we're going to prove the prophecy is fulfilled and the messianic message, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a little bit of curiosity in the genealogy of Jesus, but
Hmm.
like Christianity is passed on. And this is, kind of connecting to last week's conversation,
Right.
even about these other rituals and traditions of, christenings, baptisms. What does it mean for Christian parents to take that kind of action with
Yeah.
an infant, promising to raise the child in a certain way? But it is still really, really important in most Christian communities that I'm aware of that at some point in an individual's life, when they're old enough, they make a personal
They
declaration.
do that. Right. They make that
And so
statement.
becoming a Christian
Mm.
is, I don't want to say a separate act, but it is
Maybe it's not, it's a,
another step. Like it's
right.
another step along the
Or
process.
maybe it's a system, maybe it's a way of saying it's not a given. Is that a
Right.
way to other, like, they're going to have to take that step, and that it's not going to just happen immediately. It could theoretically happen at a certain age, but it's not like, okay, all of a sudden you become a Christian. Um,
Yeah, that there's
it's that
still
you
this,
have to do this act, right? You still have to, whatever that may be for the different
right.
churches.
Like you could certainly be raised within a Christian family. And I think that is more so like, well, because all of the adults around you
Right.
identify as Christian, but then there's still this really important piece of the puzzle, which is you yourself at some point making a declaration
Yeah.
um, to, in a lot of churches, it's the language of like, I'm going to accept Jesus into my heart and therefore like live
Mm,
this way on my own terms,
right.
not just because of the influence of your family. But
So
again,
interesting.
it's like that influence is always external, right? Like, I don't know that a lot of Christian only households would have that additional language of
Like, this is how
the,
my parents did it, and so that's how it's going to be done for you, and you're like a
yeah,
part of this tradition. There's nothing you can do. Like it
I think for Chris, yeah,
in one Jewish tradition, there is, even if you convert out of it, you actually never leave. It's
right,
almost like
exactly.
that family. It's like, yes, I said to leave, and they're not leaving me alone. They're telling me they're still a
Yeah.
part of it. Right? That's
Cause
a
like,
different mentality.
it's a different mentality,
Yeah.
or even like, yeah, I'm Jewish and I'm an atheist.
Right.
Like those two statements can coexist. And
Oh,
in
they
plenty
can.
of
There's
Jewish
so
community, yeah, and they do.
I think if we said that you cannot be Jewish and atheist, like the numbers of Judaism were just going to go like in half. Maybe that's extreme, but it is interesting to think about how this question of passing along a
Mhm.
tradition generationally, especially a religion generationally, how they differ within the context of Jewish and Christian communities and families. And so I think
Yeah.
in many ways, we're talking about the connection that we want to feel, whether it's in a community like we're trying to build at patreon.com/interfaithing, or within the context of receiving the heritages from both sides of the family, including
Hmm.
them in our rituals, and even just the notion of having a certain lineage from a particular religious tradition compared to discovering a belief, right? Discovering a sense of this is what it means for me to, let's say, be a Jew, or to be a Christian, or it could be to be a
Hmm.
Muslim, to be a Hindu. and that there are certain kinds of beliefs and actions and things that you feel to find, again, word of the day, authentic to what it means to be a part of those religious traditions and religious communities. We at Interfaithing believe very strongly that these traditions should not inherently or do not have to inherently be at odds with one another. They have different perspectives, and sometimes those perspectives don't really fit together. We think that the vast majority of them, if you take a certain kind of perspective centered in curiosity and humility, curiosity, you want to learn about the other, that the Bible of my beloved, by taking in the Bible of my beloved, then I will learn more about my beloved. And the same is true for them, that they're going to take my Bible and learn more about me, that you want to learn more and to be humble enough to say, like, yes, certain kinds of beliefs and ideas that are in my religion, that are in this tradition in a way that makes sense to me. However, if I were to follow it, if I were to do it fully, I don't think I can make this interfaithing. Yeah. Does that sound reasonable? Or make sense?
I'm like, you asking me or you asking Nadia?
Oh, I'm asking you, and I'm trying to give you that lead in to.
Oh yeah, it's there.
Oh, it's
Believe
there.
me,
All
I
right.
know. Yes. Oh, it's there. It's there. So if you can't tell, like this juicy topic that we've hinted at a couple of times, like it's coming. The train is pulling into the station.
Trust us. Listen a little bit further. We're already 3 minutes in, and we were like, believe us, that there's something coming. It's not supposed to be that hidden, but I guess maybe we're just trying something out now.
No, it's really not. And to, in response to everything that you were just saying, and why this topic that I'm bringing to today's conversation, I have felt very compelled to approach is even continuing to tease apart this idea of, well, what is Christianity? Like, it's a religion, yes, and the faith and the theology and the practices that any individual may be raised with is a part of their religious experience and their religious tradition. And in the United States, religion is a part of culture, and it's presumed for a lot of people that Christianity is a part of the dominant culture. But I think it's really important for folks coming from the Christian tradition to really investigate and even be suspicious of what it is that you may be hearing, either from public discourse or from a pulpit, about what it means to be a Christian. Because
So are you talking specifically then about Christian nationalism?
I was getting there, but yes.
Just making sure that we're getting there.
Yes, we're getting there. We're getting there. I really do promise. Because even going back a little bit to this matrilineal, patrilineal, like what is like Jewish heritage and what does that mean? Especially in the United States, I think for a lot of folks, if you were to ask them, like, do you identify as a Christian? Somebody saying like, yes, I'm an Irish Catholic. I'm an Italian Catholic. I'm Greek Orthodox. I'm Southern Baptist. And those other like ethno-cultural tags that go alongside Christianity also clue you in to other parts of a person's experience and what's important to them that are related to their like ethnic heritage. And Christianity is rolled up in a part of that, but it's kind of like they're knotted together. And what I'm encouraging folks to do is be willing to maybe untie some of those knots.
Okay. And why should we be untying those knots?
Why should we be untying those knots?
Why should we be untying those knots?
Because it can also be the case that sometimes you can say things in the name of Christianity that don't have anything to do with Christianity.
You can say things about Christianity. Just make sure I got it. You can say things about Christianity that have nothing to do with Christianity.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's where a lot of harm can also occur, and why I have encouraged in, a variety of conversations one-on-one, in bits and pieces here through this podcast, like the responsibility of the person from the Christian tradition in an interfacing family to like really research what is my tradition? What is the theology undergirding the things that I was raised with?
Right.
And be willing to ask yourself the question, do I actually agree with that?
Mm,
And if the answer is, ugh,
right. Well,
to then go ahead and explore what is true to your values, and even just being willing to, again, like kind of unknot and tease apart, like what is something that may be coming from a socio-political space and
mm,
is attached to the term of Christianity. But when you stop and really think about it, you could take away the label of Christian, and you've
right.
just got this other thing that still has influence and moves in your life and throughout your community, but it isn't actually because of Christianity.
One of the things that I've heard in a way that I've never really understood until now, in the way you put it, is that you've got these different ethno cultures, whether it's Greek Orthodox, Russian Orthodox, Italian Catholic, Irish Catholic, Southern Baptist, that
Mhm.
give you a sense of the cultural connections and the way in which Christianity is an important piece of those identities, but that both the Christianity there and also the cultural differences create a unique way of going about it.
Mhm.
Like in the example of the DeLucabergs, which we talked about before, the father DeLucaberg identifies very strongly with especially his Italian heritage, his Irish heritage, but not his Catholic heritage. And that, in a certain sense, to what you said even earlier, talking about lineage, that it's because the beliefs are not there for him, just like they're not there for many folks, but they still have a connection to that other piece to it. And the way in which you kind of put it is that now there is a way of attaching socio-political ideas. Like this is what a Christian will do on the national stage. This is
Right.
what they will vote for. This is who they will vote for because they represent these, what they're saying is Christian
Air
values.
quotes. Yeah.
It
Christian
may
values.
actually
Yeah.
be that, so no longer is the ethno-cultural piece attached to Christianity. Now it's a socio-political
Hmm.
connection, and that is a very, what you're saying is that a major problem. And if it is a major problem, it's because those socio-political views are not based in Christianity, or what?
I'm laughing because I could so easily get myself into trouble. And there's a part of me that doesn't care.
Always wanting, I always vote for you to get into trouble.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, come on.
Because it'll make for
Was
some
it?
good listening. Like, everybody get ready.
Yeah.
Red
Right.
Anna's about to get into trouble.
Like John Lewis, rest in peace, good trouble.
Good
Like
trouble.
I'm willing to get into good trouble. So yes, I did want to like use Christian nationalism as a dramatic example of this, because it is something that people would encounter in today's culture, in the socio-political dynamic that we are in, and even in more casual spaces, right? Because we're all on the internet,
Hmm.
in social media spaces, like even just the news itself. You can find yourself bombarded with language that points toward something that, in my opinion, is actually quite dangerous.
Right.
Because if you take the Christian away from Christian nationalism, nationalism in any form almost always runs the risk of being quite dangerous. Because if you don't conform to what nationalism is in
Mm,
a specific context, you're either for us or against us.
mm,
And if you're in the against bucket, then you're perceived as a threat and something needs to be done about that.
interesting.
Even if it's just to say, like, you can't sit with us.
Right. By the way, just as one kind of quick piece of this, that it's too much to unpack within the context of this conversation, but I just want to note here, both for ourselves and also for our listeners, that the way in which you just described how Christian nationalism is a certain kind of approach, that if you just take away the Christian piece, nationalism is dangerous because if you don't have those
Can be.
ideas, or can be dangerous, right? Right. It's not that it is dangerous, it's that it can be dangerous, is that if you don't agree with us, then you're against us. Now it's not just you're against us in terms of as a nation, but as Christians by virtue of attaching that.
Right. When you do attach the two things
Yeah.
together. Exactly. Yeah.
There's a similar thing happening right now with Jews in Israel. That unfortunately, whether it's as if you're someone who believes in or identifies as a Zionist, believes in Zionism, that you are viewed, whether by others or whether by even yourself, again, that sense of authenticity, as being able to hold other values too. That because you identify as a Zionist, then you may not be welcome in certain spaces because of the way that Jewish nationalism is understood today through the context of Israel. And on the other hand, if you're someone who does not identify with Zionism and that you still feel very strongly as a Jew, that there are other Jews who say, well, then you're not really Jewish, because anybody who's a Jew would support the state of Israel. So I think that there's, and I'm raising that because of that sense of nationalism, that the sense of needing to have a state that represents the values of your nation can be challenging. Martin Buber, a great Zionist thinker, once said that we better be careful, otherwise our national desire will turn into national egoism, where all that it is about ensuring that our state stays alive, but that our values don't matter as much as just our ability to exist. And he cautioned that at a time before the creation of the state of Israel. So I just want to note that right now, because I'm hearing it also within the context of Christian nationalism. And maybe this is something for us to discuss at a later point in time.
Right. Hey, there's none of these conversations like ever end whenever we stop recording, right?
Oh,
These
they
are
don't?
always, these are,
I thought
these
they
are,
do.
these topics are very alive.
Yes.
They're, they're actively fermenting
Right.
and becoming something else.
Okay. So we're coming back now to Christian nationalism, and you were talking about the separation between nationalism and Christianity.
Yes, and I appreciate that you also like spoke into that as well, because I do think it's a helpful clarification and a reminder, something that I've touched upon in previous episodes. A lot of Christians, especially in the United States, would have that sociopolitical understanding of freedom of religion, right? Like Christianity isn't the national religion of the United States. The United States doesn't have a national religion, but there is the other side of the coin. And that's why this conversation, especially today, sitting here in November of 2025, I think is really important, because there is a lot of messaging, and people maybe who didn't have the access to the microphones that they have access to now, who are pushing for what I'm going to continue calling Christian nationalism.
What are there any particular examples that really come to mind that you feel comfortable sharing of what that
Project
really means?
2025.
Say again? Project 2025.
2025.
Okay.
Anything and everything about that document, the Heritage Foundation, who are behind it, those individuals self-identify as Christians, but they have a very particular theology that, again, my personal opinion, by and large, I don't agree with, if only because it causes so much social harm.
Right.
That so much of what they're using theological language in order to build public policy, but that public policy is actually about the acquisition of power and control, and not actually about public good.
Okay.
Again, in my opinion.
Right. So that leads me to thinking about, here's a political social issue couched in theological language. Where does this impact, or where could it impact interfaithing families in regards to their ability to find a way to make it work in the home? Like, there are plenty of homes that have Democrats and Republicans as spouses. And they're just like, no politics at the table, or maybe there is, but, we figured out a way to kind of get along. So is it really that dangerous to, let's say, even if it's not how you would understand what Christianity is about, but that if for somebody Christian nationalism speaks to them, can they still have a partner who not only is of a different political belief, but a different religious belief.
Yes, because it's certainly possible. Well, I'll say yes, right? And relationship dynamics, like you and I can't control like
Right.
why or how any two people are in relationship together. We have said that the sharing of ideas
Mm.
and equity, to come back
Yeah.
to that term that you used earlier, like what does that mean for any two people and the way that they're building their family? You and I certainly have a shared understanding of what that means, but that it's still a subjective
Right. Okay.
term.
Yeah.
Like what is equity? And what I am hoping to encourage, and I know we're already at the 40-minute mark. It's like, where is she going with this? Is she just ranting a little bit? But what I am really, really hoping to encourage for our listeners is, especially for those in an interfacing family who are still engaged or have a desire to engage with a Christian community, to attend a church regularly, it's important for everyone who sits in those pews to discern what it is that's coming from the pulpit,
Okay.
right? Like
Right.
it isn't meant for whomever is sitting in the congregation to just be passive.
Mm. You know,
The Spirit moves through all of us, right? And so even though the person standing in the pulpit has a title
yeah.
and therefore has some sense of authority, presumably, right? Like, but I think it's also important, and I heard somebody describe this recently who is a pastor himself say that in the example of Jesus, to be a pastor is to be a shepherd.
Mm-hmm.
You're a caretaker of a flock.
Mm.
And so ego,
Yeah.
as human beings who are flawed, ego can suddenly rear its head. And it's totally okay, I would say, especially as an interfacing family, because your lens is maybe a little wider and you know that you have your partner and your other family members who believe things differently and come
Yeah.
from a different background than you, that if you hear something that doesn't sound okay coming from the pulpit or coming from anyone claiming to be a Christian, it's okay to say,
Yeah.
I don't really think that's it. Let's have a conversation about that.
So, one of the things that's coming to my mind with as you're describing this is that Jews don't have the same problem. Um, love
I
to
mean,
question their
that
rabbis. Sometimes I think a little too much. Um, coming from my own experience, but I do. I think that there is a sense of, well, you know, I don't think that the rabbi is correct on this. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean in every topic that people are willing to question the rabbi. In fact, that there are certain topics having to do with ritual and certain laws that most Jews would defer to rabbis to be able to discuss on or to decide on. But that,
mhm,
especially when it comes to, let's say, political, social issues, values issues, that there isn't the same thing. But in our prep for today, you had mentioned a story about an interfaithing family in which the Christian wife was asking you, like, in her community, if it was okay to ask the pastor or to challenge the
mhm,
pastor on a particular issue that affected in seemingly her ability to live in a family unit where there are these different views of
mhm,
how to live life, how to do religion, the Messiah, the all of the specific ritual and theological differences between Judaism and Christianity that are out there, or between Christianity and any other religion, that
mhm.
she felt that I have to challenge my pastor on some of those views that he's sharing that would be inconsistent with the life that I'm building, but I don't know if I can. Is that a fair
Right.
way to describe it?
Yeah. And actually, I think the question was, can I as well as should I?
Right.
Right.
And I
Because
guess,
some of it was about, would it be disrespectful even to approach the pastor privately to say, like, hey, can we have a meeting and then discuss XYZ topic that
and
came
why
up?
and why would that be disrespectful? I guess maybe that's the thing I'm wondering about.
Yeah, and I think that's where sometimes these other cultural norms get laid on top of. This is the experience of what it means to be in a Christian space, so that if somebody with a title, somebody with authority, therefore commands respect, and that means you can't ever ask them a question. Like, I've just seen that personally in quite a few Christian spaces and outside of Christian spaces as well. I think there's, again, like a broader cultural norm. Perhaps there's a gender dynamic to that, that as a woman who was considering going to speak to who happened to be a male pastor, like,
Mhm.
is there could be
There could
all
be
sorts
lots
of
of different
things, like, wrapped
dynamics.
up in
But
that.
I guess
Yeah, there could be lots and lots of different dynamics. And so I think that that, again, is kind of an example of, is it Christian or is it something else? And for our listeners and the family members from a Christian tradition, like, I'm encouraging, I'm challenging all of you all to don't be afraid
mm,
to go ahead and dig in and, like I said, untie some of those knots and then put those pieces of string side by side and say, like, what is
yeah.
really, like, what am I really looking at?
Y
What's really here? What are the threads that make up this thing that I've been
Right,
referring to as a part of my Christian tradition? But what is coming from another cultural influence,
right.
and kind of what is the core?
I guess maybe part of my questioning is centered on the particular topic of social political issues like abortion, like healthcare, whatever it might be, that
Even immigration.
immigration, right, that are often talked about in Christian communities in certain ways, that if I were to talk about it in a Jewish space, it would also be taken in a very different way.
Mm,
And I think that's where you're helping me to kind of understand just the dynamics in play, because there are certain dynamics that I've experienced as a rabbi where I know that part of my job is to represent the tradition, or that
mm,
people view me as, here's, like, we want to know what God has to say about this, and we're asking you, rabbi, to kind of tell us what you think God would say here given your understanding of Jewish tradition. Probably would
mhm,
not say it like that. There are many rabbis who think that they're God, but they're not. And same with pastors, but and maybe there's also that ego issue. So there are those elements, and you can't question certain perspectives, again, depending upon what the cultural context is of your community. And I also think that while part of my job is to represent the tradition, part of my job is also to make the space safe for um, my community, for the people that I'm serving, as well as to educate the folks who are coming in, who are witnessing Judaism for the first time, and who are making judgments about Judaism based upon whatever the experience is.
mhm,
Um, I have family members, I have friends, I have colleagues who, one of the things that they just really just don't like is how synagogue and these kind of Jewish religious spaces are often seen as like a production, or seen as
mm,
a spectacle in a certain way. And there is, it is. And part of what the reason why it is because it's needing to get across a message, just like any show, any movie, any play would. And I remember listening to Joel Osteen,
mm,
in his church in Houston, and hear his teachings and finding a sense of connection to some of it, but also not to other pieces of it. And so I think that what I'm hearing of what you're saying is that, both as a rabbi and also from the Jewish tradition here, is be willing to question the messenger as well as the message. Don't necessarily assume that one thing you hear is the correct answer to all of these questions, all of these issues. And
right,
most importantly, is to have the curiosity to want to learn more, to know that maybe in this case, you don't need to be humble, but you need to help the one who is teaching you to be humble in what they're knowing, because you're living with a partner, you're living with the family, you're living with the family unit that is doing things differently, and God loves both of you.
right. Yeah, I think the humility and the curiosity are so important. I'd even say, like, guiding lights to really lift up from this, and also to, remind folks, make clear as needed. Um, I'm not really just sitting here trying to harp on Christianity as a whole or certain churches, etc. The disagreement exists because look at the plethora of denominations that there are. There isn't agreement
Mm-hmm.
on exactly what a Christian community, church, denomination, fill in the blank is going to look like. And part of the discourse that I was bringing into this was, again, just to like have that curiosity.
Yeah.
I said discernment before, but also to be unafraid, perhaps to ask yourself, the nostalgia piece is very real. And the emotional piece of, what raised you and who raised you and where those events took place is also very important. And people can continue to have an attachment to that. But like so many conversations that we've had, that all of this is still a part of a process.
Mhm.
And the connection that you have with your partner might also mean that the connection you've had with a particular church community might also need to shift for the sake of your
Right.
family and where you presently find yourself, as well as where you want to
Yeah.
go. So I'm not encouraging people to just like go out there and like start arguments for the sake of arguing.
It may mean that certain places are not safe. They're
Right.
not brave enough to be willing to engage in the necessary
Hmm.
conversations for interfaithing families to feel welcome.
Yeah.
Um,
Of things that you might have been able to tolerate if it's just yourself. The connection I do feel to this space, like nothing is perfect. And so there are certain things about it that I don't 100% like, but I can tolerate them. And if my family were going to come along with me, if I
yeah.
am not just talking about this as myself singularly, that toleration ends.
Yeah. You know what we
Because
should
what
do?
I'm able to tolerate and what we as a family unit and what the way that I show respect to my partner actually means that I can't tolerate this.
Yeah. You reminded me of an idea that we should just do, because I think also be kind of fun, is basically to kind of come up with an insignia, an emblem, or in Hebrew, a certification, a kosher certification in a way for interfaithing congregations, Jewish,
My
Christian,
goodness, yeah.
Muslim, Hindu, whatever it may be. Like,
Like
let
triple
us
verified.
exactly like you're verified as being interfaithing friendly. So if you are
Yeah.
an executive director of any of these communities and are interested, hey, you know what? Interfaithingpod@gmail.com. Leave us a note and maybe we can
Leave
have a
us an
further
idea, leave us a
conversation on
space.
that.
Yeah, the same way that
That'd be
there,
awesome.
sanctuary cities have that designation and certain other churches, speaking of these
Yeah.
socio-political topics that are so hot and heavy, like what's safe?
Yeah,
Where are people welcomed? These are important questions that really
for
matter.
sure.
And yeah, and just also to put it out there through this podcast that, well, I'll say this via a personal anecdote. There was a long, long time of my young adulthood in particular. I did not want people to know me as a Christian.
Mm.
I did not want that to be like the first or a like major association.
This is the bomb. This is the thing to drop at the 53-minute mark. I love it.
Mhm. And the reason why
Yeah.
is because in certain spaces, in certain communities, Christians had a bad rap.
Uh,
It was assumed that if I led with, "Hi, my name's Anna and I'm a believer,"
mhm.
people would think I'm small minded. I am, against the welcoming of certain types of
Wow.
people. I'm homophobic. I'm
Right. All
fill
these
in the
things.
blank.
Yeah.
And those are political stances. They are not theological stances.
Mhm.
Okay. And so I wouldn't lead with that, and actually went kind of purposely would wait as long as possible
Yeah.
to even ever bring it up,
Wow.
because I wanted myself to be known to someone and then be able to say, also, by the way, here's how I was raised and here's what I believe, if only to sometimes be able to say, yeah, it is actually
It's
possible
possible.
to be a Christian and have air quotes liberal or progressive, like whatever political beliefs.
Yeah.
Like not all Christians are small-minded bigots,
Right.
because in certain parts of the country, at least in that era of my life, that was a predominant association. So I'm also bringing this conversation into our podcast because the cultural conversation, the national conversation, even amongst our major news media, has changed.
Mm,
It has changed. And so I just want to encourage folks to like, don't be afraid to say who you are.
yeah.
Just like last week, to bring that quote, often attributed to different theologians or saints, preach the gospel at all times, and if necessary, use words.
Mm,
Right? Like,
right.
how people know you should not
About how you
simply
act.
be a label.
It's about how you are. Right.
It's who you are, it's
Yeah.
how you are, it's your behaviors, the love that you extend. And therefore, if you're walking into a church or seeking to form community in a space that does call itself Christian and you don't see that alignment with your own values,
Mm.
it's okay to ask questions.
And it's also okay to step away.
And
It's
it's
also
also
okay
okay
to
to
step
walk
away.
away.
All right.
It's
Well,
also
this
okay to
is
walk
this is
away.
food for much more, which I think is going to be leading into some more of our episodes because we got to unpack this, Rev Anna.
I know.
And as well, just the notion of being able to identify as religious in some sort of way and what that
Mhm,
means
mhm,
as a believer or as someone who identifies in some way with the religion, and as well, and when it comes to interfaithing and interfaithing families, like what exactly are we talking about in terms of sharing that heritage, exposing the entire family to both sets of traditions, because it's not just about family; it's also about those beliefs and those ideas that are central to what I want not going to say what Judaism and Christianity is, because again, that's part of the point that you're raising is you got to
mhm,
question what those ideas that are supposed to be central really are, but that if one wants to even self-identify as a Jew, as a Christian, as religious, as someone who has that belief, like what is it that you're really saying? And are you comfortable sharing that in a more public setting, especially if you're meeting new people? So I think that there's so much here for us to continue to unpack. But Ravana, it is always such a pleasure to get together with you every week. And I hope that for all of our listeners that you've been able to hear much of what we're talking about as it relates to building connections with one another, building connections in terms of our ability to function together, to work together, to pass down heritages together, and also our connection to our beliefs and to our ways of
mhm.
life that are really important for us. And we want to be able to do it in the, what word am I going to use? Authentic way,
Authentic way.
authentic way for us as individuals and as
Yes.
communities. So, Ravana,
So
any final
we
thoughts?
just to encourage people again, I mean, this is the first time in a long time we've gone for like an entire hour with no breaks. We could probably go for a couple more. And if anything that has come up piques your curiosity in such a way, like, hey, look out for that link to join us for one of these upcoming Patreon community events. And my gosh, we are so excited to be in conversation with the
Mhm.
rest of you.
Yeah. So please make sure to email us, interfaithingpod@gmail.com. Join our Patreon community, patreon.com/interfaithing. And again, we look forward to being in your ear every week. And so with that, take care
Stay curious
and keep
and keep
interfaithing.
interfacing.